He's kind of Obama-esque when he speaks. The problem is he's Jewish. I know we don't want to talk about that, but we need to talk about that. Democratic Party, as long as that faith isn't Jewish, you're good.
Well, you said it, but...
Bill Maher just tore his own party apart on live television, and CNN's Dana Bash sat there and took it because she couldn't say a word back.
And James Tallarico is...
a young Democrat...
Christian and so forth. But I will add he wears his faith on his sleeve in a way that he believes will help him.
Well, in the Democratic Party, as long as that faith isn't Jewish, you're good.
Well, you said it, but...
I said it because it's true.
Watch Dana Bash's reaction. She doesn't push back. She doesn't argue. She just concedes the point because she knows he's right and there's no comfortable rebuttal available. This wasn't a random jab either. Maher's talking about Texas Senate candidate James Tallarico, a Democrat who's built his entire campaign around wearing his Christian faith publicly, and Maher's pointing out the obvious double standard. That kind of open religious identity is celebrated in the party right up until the religion in question is Judaism. And the numbers back him up completely. Pew Research now shows 80% of Democrats hold an unfavorable view of Israel, up from just 53% 4 years ago. That's not a fringe shift. That's the party's own base moving that fast in that direction. And Maher's simply saying out loud what Bash couldn't dispute on camera. And it wasn't just faith Maher wasn't letting slide that night. Watch him cut off Hunter Biden mid-rant with 2 words.
And he is our unelected, unappointed emissary to the Middle East for a war that nobody asked for. It is absurd.
Well,
it is
not
literally
nobody,
absurd.
But,
What?
Not nobody.
Oh, that's true. Bibi Netanyahu asked for it, and he was 100%.
Your father, among every other Democrat, every Democrat said Iran can't have nuclear weapons.
And every single Democrat and every president since Jimmy Carter refused what the Israelis wanted. What refused what the Israelis wanted was to bomb Iran.
Well,
every single one of them. The only person who fell for it was Donald Trump.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hunter Biden walks in ready to dunk on Jared Kushner for being an unelected voice on Iran policy, and Maher stops him in 2 words before he can finish the thought, pointing out it wasn't nobody who asked for this. That correction forces Hunter to immediately name Netanyahu, and then Maher goes further, reminding him that his own father and virtually every Democrat since Jimmy Carter held the exact same position, that Iran cannot be allowed nuclear weapons. Hunter's own response actually undercuts his entire opening argument. He admits every president before Trump refused what Israel wanted, which was military action, and that Trump was the only one willing to act. Maher didn't even need to make that point himself. He just asked one question and let Hunter Biden make the case against his own argument on live television. And when the conversation turned to why the DSA keeps winning primaries, Maher had a receipt ready for that too.
Megan Romer, she is the co-chair of the DSA. She was on David Remnick's podcast, and she talked about taxing the hell out of them. And he said, what do you mean by that? And she said, well, I don't really have a solid, and then just dribbled off.
Yeah.
And he said, but shouldn't you? Shouldn't you be more specific about what taxing the hell means? They don't know anything, okay?
Because they weren't in tune with what their voters really cared about. Guess what? They don't care about corporate tax rates.
And the Democrats made it a lot easier for them by harping on cultural issues where the country thought they had lost their minds. And they can't define a woman, and they think, the WNBA should be full of men. And, they just crazy stuff. And so they kind of opened the door for that.
This is the same Megan Romer we've covered before, the DSA's own national co-chair, and Maher's pointing out something simple. When an actual journalist asked her to define her own signature policy, tax the hell out of the rich, she couldn't produce a number, a bracket, or a mechanism. That's not a gotcha question. That's the most basic follow-up imaginable, and she had nothing. And Maher's broader point is the one that should actually worry Democratic strategists. These candidates are winning not because voters examined their policies and liked them, but because the party spent years on culture war fights so extreme, unable to define a woman, arguing men belong in women's sports, that a huge swath of voters checked out entirely and left the door open for whoever showed up with energy. even candidates who can't answer basic questions about their own platform. Speaking of policies nobody can defend, watch what happened when a Seattle congressional candidate got asked one simple question about her own campaign website.
A few weeks ago, a liberal Democrat named Melissa Chaudhry, running for Congress in Seattle, was asked why, among the many progressive causes listed on her website, LGBT rights was conspicuously absent. Because, she said, a lot of Muslims do not feel that way, unfortunately. Now, here's where liberal sphincters just tightened because they heard the word Muslim and have been brainwashed into thinking, oh, some Islamophobic is coming now. No, just facts and a little honesty to the people who see everything as oppressor versus oppressed, but can't see who actually does a lot of oppressing. So let me ask, is this the progressive policy now? Is Ms. Chaudhry right? We throw gay people under the bus anytime it clashes with what makes Muslims uncomfortable?
Melissa Chaudhry said this herself on the record to an actual editorial board, not something taken out of context. She's a progressive candidate who built a platform full of causes, and when asked directly why gay rights weren't on the list, her own answer was that it might upset Muslim voters. Maher's question cuts right to the actual hierarchy this reveals. If a candidate will quietly drop one minority group's rights the moment defending them becomes inconvenient with another constituency, that's not principled coalition building. That's picking and choosing which rights actually matter based on who's easiest to please. And it's worth noting, this wasn't just Maher's audience that reacted. Washington's own Stonewall Democrats caucus revolted publicly, demanding endorsements get pulled, and Chaudhry ended up losing her primary entirely. And Maher saved his most direct point for last, about the newest rising star Democrats are excited about.
So what do you think of this new star, Jon Ossoff, I mentioned in the monologue? I mean, we've mentioned him before. He's been there for a couple of years in Georgia. He's kind of Obama-esque when he speaks, and he really lit into Trump in a way that people seem to be, certainly on the left, thirsting for. The problem is he's Jewish. I know we don't want to talk about that, but we need to talk about that because that is the situation in the Democratic Party. They think Gaza is a genocide. It is not. There's an actual meaning to the word genocide. It doesn't come close. But as long as you tag that name, genocide, of course, what kind of normal person would not hate someone who's responsible for a genocide? And they've all just signed on to this because they're just big on buzzwords and lawn signs and bumper stickers. That's as deep as they go.
This is worth being precise about. That Gaza amounts to genocide is Maher's own stated opinion here, not an established legal finding. It remains a genuinely disputed question among international bodies and legal scholars, and that's fair for you to know before you take a side. But Maher's actual point isn't really about the legal definition, it's about his own party's base. He's saying plainly that a rising Democratic star, one he compares favorably to Obama, faces a real problem with his own party's activist wing simply because he's Jewish, at a moment when 80% of Democrats already view Israel unfavorably. Maher's diagnosis is that this isn't deep ideological conviction driving that shift. It's slogans and bumper stickers standing in for actual thought. And coming from someone who spent his entire career as a reliable liberal voice, that's about as damning an assessment of his own party's depth as you'll hear anywhere.